So again, thank you for joining. My name is Sarah Pierce, and I am the Housing and Energy Affordability Program Coordinator for the Metropolitan Housing Coalition. Um, Here at the Metropolitan Housing Coalition, let's see if it'll move forward. We are a coalition of more than 300 organizational and individual members who are passionate about advocacy to fair, accessible, and affordable housing here in Louisville. And what I do is I oversee our EveryHome program, which is dedicated to bridging the gap between affordable housing conversations and affordable utilities, because you can't have one without the other. Also here today, I have Lane Boldman with the Kentucky Conservation Committee. After this presentation, I will be passing it over to Lane to give us a bit of an update about LIHEAP at the local legislative level. So to start, I'd like to give a little bit of context before we jump into LIHEAP. There are a couple of terms that I'm going to be using throughout this webinar, affordable energy and energy burdens. Affordable energy is the ability to warm and cool your home, to have hot or cold water, breathable air, cooking areas, a solid building envelope without breaking the bank. And the rule of thumb is that residents should not pay more than 6% of their monthly income on utility bills. If you are paying more than 6%, you're considered energy burdened. And if you're paying more than 10%, you are considered severely energy cost burdened. So what does that look like in the US all the way down to Louisville? In the US, about 1 in 4 American households, so about 25%, are energy burdened, spending more than 6% of their income on energy bills alone. Whereas the southeast portion of the United States has the highest amount of energy burdens, that being about 38%. In Louisville, 16% of households across all incomes are energy burdened. However, this is more dire for people who are low income. So if you are considered low income in Louisville, about 67% of low income individuals are paying more than 10% of their monthly income on energy bills. There are a couple of factors that affect energy affordability for us. I won't go into detail on all of them today, but I will focus on one specific one. So these 4 factors are geographic location, socioeconomic situation, energy prices and policies, and housing characteristics. So I'm going to focus here a bit on housing characteristics, just in terms of the building stock that we have in Louisville. So if you look at this map, you can see all of the dark shaded areas are the percent. It's a high percent of houses that were built before 1960. So you can see that it's concentrated to downtown and the northwest core of Louisville. So in total, about 72% of our homes in Louisville were built before 1970. And so, of course, these older homes, they're harder to heat, they're harder to cool. Energy can be escaping out of, older windows or doors, not having a very solid building envelope. And so what I mean by building envelope is if you have your home, that envelope is what is keeping them from the outside and keeping your air inside. So, for example, if you have, a cracked window or something like that, all of that hot or cold air is escaping out your window. And so you're going to be bumping up that thermostat to make it even. So that can also increase energy prices. Also in water terms, it also has a lot of older homes have a lot of leaking pipes and water infiltration as well. So In terms of how energy burdens affect us, they can affect us mentally as well as physically. Physically speaking, if you do not have a secure building envelope, you can be exposed to different physical effects such as asthma or COPD. If you don't have adequate heating or cooling, you may be subjected to hypothermia or heat stress. There could be carbon monoxide poisoning, lead exposure. Um, there could be air pollutants like mold. All of these things can also lead to mental health effects as well, such as stress and depression. Um, Now, if somebody is experiencing an energy burden, most likely they have experienced something called the heat, eat, or treat dilemma. This means that if they are not able to afford their utility bill 1 month, they may have to decide between paying their energy bill, paying for groceries, or paying for medications. And that is, of course, a choice that no one should have to make. All of that to say, we need not only affordable energy, but we need energy assistance programs. One of the biggest ones that we have and what we'll be talking about today is LIHEAP, which is the Low Income Housing Energy Assistance Program. This is a federally funded program that helps low-income families with their energy bills and with weatherization of their home, so making that building envelope tighter. The goals of LIHEAP are to reduce energy burdens, prevent energy disconnections, and improve health and safety within the home. LIHEAP does this through a couple of different programs, including winter help, the spring subsidy, summer cooling, and the weatherization assistance program. So I just wanted to go over the different programs to give context to exactly what LIHEAP provides. I'll start with the heating program. There is a subsidy component and a crisis component to this program. For the subsidy, it is from November to December, and it's really focusing on helping people with a one-time payment for their utility bill to ensure that they have adequate heating in the winter. For eligibility, if you look at this chart over here, this is what 100% of the federal poverty level would be, which is a requirement for the program, as well as not having more than $2,000 in liquid assets. For the crisis component, this is more directed towards ensuring that people are not disconnected during this time. It is in a time of, like it says, crisis. It is from January to March. Also at 150% of the federal poverty level, but you also cannot you have to have either 4 or fewer days of any type of heating elements such as oil, propane, kerosene, or wood. Or if you have received an eviction notice citing unpaid rent if your utilities are included in the rent, which sometimes water and energy can be included in rent. For the spring subsidy, this is also another one-time payment. It is from April to May, and it's towards a household's electric provider. It does not require a past due bill or an eviction notice, but you do have to be, of course, at that at or below 150% federal poverty level. For the summer cooling program, this is from July to September, and most of the time this is only offered if there is additional federal dollars or state funds that are available. This is a one-time payment, again, to the electric provider, but it also offers air conditioning units for windows. So since again, you have to be at or below 150% of the federal poverty level, but also you have to have a member in the household with either a health condition or a family member that is above 65 in age or below the age of 6. The Weatherization Assistance Program, which many of you may know is through the Kentucky Housing Corporation. They receive funding from LIHEAP, helps families lower their bills by weatherizing their home. And what I mean by weatherizing is when we were talking earlier about building envelopes and how sometimes they can, um, not be very secure. You have leaking doors and windows, and you have a lack of insulation within the home. The weatherization assistance program is going to help you with that. It is a little bit difficult, more difficult if you're a renter, just because you have to get permission from your landlord. But the weatherization assistance program could include things like energy audits, energy efficiency education, air infiltration sealing, which is, weather stripping around doors and windows, insulation, either your furnace to be repaired or replaced, and other energy efficiency appliances. So I also wanted to talk a bit about the impact of LIHEAP over the past couple of years, just to give context of how impactful the LIHEAP program actually is here in Kentucky. So in the U.S. As a whole, LIHEAP has served about 6.7 million households, with 40% of them being seniors. Earlier, I was talking about how the average energy burden for somebody who is energy burden is 6%, paying more than 6% of their monthly income. An average energy burden for a Kentuckian using LIHEAP is about 17%, which is extremely high. So this is past the 10% rule of thumb of severely energy burdened. But LIHEAP was able to lower this burden by 44% in the past few years. In 2023, 119,000 Kentuckians were served through LIHEAP, with an average benefit per household of $136, which again, as I was mentioning earlier, a lot of the programs are one-time emergency assistance bill payments. So that's about that typical price of an energy bill. As far as Kentucky households that were weatherized through the Weatherization Assistance Program, that is about 443 households. The majority of those in the program making only 75% of the federal poverty level, which is way below that baseline of 150%. And as far as disconnections go, LIHEAP has prevented, since 2016, 1.25 million disconnections across Kentucky, which is something extremely important because, as you all may know, if you're a renter and your energy is disconnected, you may be subjected to being evicted, and that eviction can also prevent you from getting future housing. But I also wanted to highlight that this is not only quantitative benefits, there are also qualitative benefits. These are real quotes from people who have used LIHEAP in the past few years. And I wanted to read some of them just to give context of how important this is for Kentuckians who are using LIHEAP. So an elderly lady who had lost her husband last year and no longer had his income was quoted saying that she is so thankful for people like LIHEAP and programs that help others. Another Owen County resident had mentioned that LIHEAP helps keep their household and their family warm. They lived on $940 a month, and without the program, their family would freeze to death. Another Northeast Community Action consumer stated that with LIHEAP's help, they can now purchase some of their diabetic medicine. So this is going back to the heat, eat, treat dilemma that I was discussing earlier. And they would not know what they would do without the help of LIHEAP. So that being said, there are some challenges that come with LIHEAP funding. There is a very high demand for LIHEAP assistance, but very low funding. We'll get into this a little bit later, but with federal funding cuts, it's unsure whether this program will continue. There is also some unawareness of certain programs. Some people may not know if LIHEAP if they're eligible for LIHEAP, how to apply for LIHEAP. And, some may, if they qualify for SNAP, they also may qualify for LIHEAP, but there isn't necessarily a one-stop shop to apply for all of those all at once. There is also some eligibility barriers. Of course, there is that barrier of having or being at 150% of the federal poverty level. In federal funding cuts, which I explained a bit more on this slide, there are three different sectors that are proposing cuts to LIHEAP. So first is the executive office, the president. Trump did propose eliminating LIHEAP in his 2026 budget. And recently in April, he had fired the staff of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, which is responsible for administering those LIHEAP dollars. For a long time, the funds were frozen, but they have recently been unfrozen, and the summer subsidy program is currently active. The House had proposed a 60% cut to LIHEAP. The status of that is currently uncertain. The One Big Beautiful Bill doesn't necessarily exactly address LIHEAP directly, but with that proposed cut, it would be devastating for Kentuckians. The Senate, however, proposed increasing funding slightly for LIHEAP. They stated that it was an important program that a lot of people used, and they proposed adding an additional $100 million more than was in the budget last year. Now, of course, this brings a lot of consequences, as LIHEAP is a crucial buffer for households and their financial safety and well-being. So without LIHEAP, Kentuckians, they wouldn't be able to pay their utility bill. If they aren't able to pay their utility bill, they would have to choose between food, medicine, or paying that electric bill. And if one is more important than the other, they may be disconnected from utility services altogether and may be at risk of being evicted. Also, if somebody does not have adequate heating or cooling within their house, they may suffer from health issues such as, hyperthermia, heat stress, especially from those poor building envelopes. Essentially, if you have less funding for LIHEAP, or if the LIHEAP program, is on pause for a while, there's going to be less programs altogether, not just LIHEAP. So people still need assistance for paying their bills. If they can't get it from LIHEAP, they will try to find it from other sources, such as nonprofits. So Kentuckians will have to seek assistance from nonprofits, which tend to run out of funds very quickly. There are some things that we can do. I know a lot of it is kind of uncertain, especially at the state and federal level. But there are some things that we can personally do, and I know that Lane will speak here in a minute about what we can do at the state level with a call to action. But I just wanted to mention that it would be important to call or write to your local representative and just tell them personal stories, or tell them that they need to support increased funding for LIHEAP. These people, they're representatives, and they are representing Kentuckians who are receiving this assistance. It's also important to stay informed. So tell family, tell friends how impactful the LIHEAP program is. This meeting will also be recorded, so if you wanted to send them the link as well to keep them informed, that would be good as well. In the last slide, I was talking about how if LIHEAP goes away, nonprofits will be overwhelmed with the amount of people who are asking for assistance. So they're going to need a lot of help in the next few months. So I would suggest either donating or even donating some of your time to help out. Finally, I would state to be prepared, stay prepared, and to be informed. So if you have a family member who needs assistance, there are currently other programs that may still have funding. As I was saying earlier, the summer subsidy program through LIHEAP is currently ongoing, so they still have some funding. And I would also recommend looking up cheap, easy ways to weatherize you and your family's homes. So look into weather stripping or other energy efficiency appliances that may help with that energy bill. But for now, I want to turn it over to Lane to give us a bit of an update on LIHEAP at the state Kentucky legislative level.
Thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate the invite to jump in today. My name is Lane Boldman. I'm with the Kentucky Conservation Committee, and KCC is a statewide environmental direct advocacy nonprofit. We provide policy and lobbying support for individuals and organizations, plus lobby training on critical environmental policy issues and impacting Kentucky's land, air, and water. We are registered to lobby on both the executive branch and legislative branches of government as a 501(c)(4). So basically, what we try to do is help provide extra capacity to 501(c)(3) nonprofits when they have matters of particular concern at state government or federal government. But our primary focus is state. And then we engage with the cabinet on several different environmental issues. So some of what I'm going to say, Sarah already mentioned, but I think it's definitely worth repeating and emphasizing. Um, so if you're not already aware, the federal budget, the Trump administration has even voiced that they propose eliminating LIHEAP entirely in its fiscal 2026 budget request. But like many things that you may have seen in the Trump administration, it's a little uncertain where it's actually going to go. But there definitely has been an intent from some of their comments. The Trump administration claims that LIHEAP is unnecessary. They consider it a pass-through, citing reports of, potential fraud and things like that. And they suggest the states have their own policies to prevent things like utility disconnections. And to some degree, there's some accuracy in some of that, but as you know, what is done in theory and what is done in actuality on the ground are two different things, oftentimes. LIHEAP certainly is not unnecessary. But obviously there's a lack of awareness of how much there is a need for this capacity, like many of the things that are being cut back right now. Um, the program distributed nearly $4 billion to households struggling to pay their energy bills. Congress did, like Sarah said, approved a significant amount of funding for LIHEAP's 2025 budget. The problem there is that funding is not the only issue. They've had a severe cutback of staff, and there's been a round of staff firings. So, as Sarah also said, there's no funding flagged in HB1, the big beautiful bill. They did not take any action on LIHEAP, but that doesn't mean there isn't some opportunity. The states right now are moving ahead despite all of this uncertainty. But in July of 2025, the Senate Appropriations Committee approved a bill that allocates over $4 billion for LIHEAP in fiscal year 2026. And that's an increase over the current year's funding. Um, and it contradicts the Trump administration's preliminary budget proposal to eliminate the fund starting in fiscal year 26. So I think federally, lawmakers understand this is an important program, but there's a lot of pressure, obviously, from the Trump administration to cut back. And so there's still an opportunity to debate. And a lot of this is going to depend, unfortunately, on voices coming from the public. So the U.S. House of Representatives is expected to take action on an appropriations bill in September. There is strong bipartisan support for LIHEAP in Congress, despite the proposed cuts uh, and actions disrupting the program. And Congress has until October of 2025 to decide whether to accept the administration's proposal to eliminate LIHEAP funding or to continue the program's funding. So, and approximately 6 million people depend on LIHEAP programs. So this is where it's really important for the public to start making some noise or making more noise. I know in this political climate, there's a lot of demands right now. There's a lot of people that have uh, just given up, saying, trying to work with lawmakers or being involved in politics. I like to say, if they're not listening to you, you need to speak louder and more often. Um, but right now, there's also the capacity issue. All federal staff responsible for LIHEAP at Health and Human Services were fired, and that's created an unprecedented uncertainty for the program for the states administering it. So the states, even if the states step up for funding, states are being asked to run the program without federal guidance or training, and that puts the program also at risk. So, so in Kentucky, lawmakers are looking at this. Right now is the interim session. It's a slower time. Lawmakers meet on several different issues during the interim. They don't take hard actions during this time, but they did have a meeting on LIHEAP in the interim Joint Committee on Natural Resources and Energy, which is the main place that those issues would be taken up. This happened on July 24th. They reviewed some materials relating to the next funding application. Basically, what they are doing at this point is they're assuming status quo for now because they don't really have a whole lot of concrete information to assume otherwise, and they're proceeding with their funding application. They heard from Shannon Hall, who is from the Department of Community-Based Services, and Rick Baker of Community Action Kentucky. If you actually want to see their testimony, I will put that in the chat because these are oftentimes filmed. And let's see, they went through some of the funds for Kentucky. LIHEAP funds spent to date in federal fiscal year 2025 is 43.4 million spent so far, and the anticipated amount of funding in the federal fiscal year 2026 is 58 million. So it's quite a chunk of change. The one thing that is frustrating from where I sit as a nonprofit lobbyist is that there's still a lot of misunderstanding in state lawmakers on what these programs do, how much people are actually dependent on them, and that it's not a situation where people are just freeloading. These are situations where people are in critical and dire need. So, so what I'm going to suggest at this point, there are lawmakers that do get it on the Natural Resources Committee, particularly ones out in Eastern Kentucky. So we have Senator Smith, who asked a lot of questions during the update hearing during the interim, and Representative Bobby McCool in Martin County. Senator Smith is in Hazard. So the lawmakers that are out in Eastern Kentucky, they certainly have a lot of constituents that are dependent on these subsidies. And but then you also have some champions in the city areas. So you've got Senator Herron in Louisville, who has certainly asked hard questions about um, rentals, how to deal with rentals. And Representative Adam Moore in Lexington has asked a lot of questions as well about the fact that not only are the funds at risk, but that Kentucky may have an even greater energy burden soon because it's anticipated that electric rates are going to increase. So you may have read in the news that there are some new proposals to expand utility capacity. A lot of this is due to large load data centers to support artificial intelligence. That's going to come down on people's bills. That's another issue that several of us are working on to see that that doesn't happen. But your percentage of people that are dependent on LIHEAP may increase at the same time that the funding will decrease and the staffing has decreased. So So one thing I want to mention is that as far as the state's concerned, their model plan right now is moving forward with the status quo again because they don't have anything to tell them otherwise right now. But this is a budget year that's coming up. So these questions are going to become very hard choices pretty soon. What I would suggest is making sure that your lawmakers understand how you're benefiting from the programs or how your constituents are benefiting from these programs and get those personal stories out there. I love the slide that Sarah had with the word balloons that had quotes. That's exactly what they need to hear. There's a lot of misinformation when constituents are not directly engaging with lawmakers. I've certainly talked to some that, just think that people aren't paying their bills because they're lazy, and they're trying to get away with something, right? If you are directly in the face of your lawmakers, that really helps knock that myth down. And so I'm going to put in the chat a couple of things. I'll put in a contact for your U.S. representatives to talk to them about LIHEAP because this is still in play at the federal level. And then I'll also put in a link how to contact your state lawmaker. And then we're available. My organization is glad to accompany folks. We can bring our own lobbyists to join you if you want to talk to your representatives or talk to your state lawmakers. And we can support you or we can help you with drafting comments. And we've got a lot of tips on our website about how to do citizen advocacy, how to prepare yourself for meeting with lawmakers or just talking to them or setting up a letter if you want to send to them. But the most important thing is that they hear from you, that people are out there, they're paying attention, and they're concerned that this is a vital service that is at huge risk. When the budget session comes up, there's going to be a lot of competition, and if suddenly the state is burdened with an extra several $1 million of liability because we're losing the capacity at LIHEAP and it's still needed, then they're going to have to make some tough choices. So in the chat, there is how to contact your U.S. representatives. I have information on our webpage. If you want to contact your state lawmaker, you can look them up here. That is the state's website. And if you want to contact us for more help, we have some tips on citizen advocacy on our website, and that is my email. So, anything else? I'll turn it back over to Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lane. That was some great information and some great resources. After this call, I will be sure to send a follow-up email to everyone on the call with these links so that you have a physical copy of it. Now I wanted to turn it over to a bit of a Q&A session. So if anybody has any questions for me or Lane, feel free to come off mute or put in the chat.
So this isn't so much a question as it is kind of a statement. I was having a discussion with a family member the other day that talked about, oh, well, if these things are cut, it's okay because the nonprofits can just handle that load. They say, oh, well, the nonprofits will, provide that assistance. And the truth of the matter is that nonprofits are continuously underfunded and overburdened. And so, when people want to use that kind of argument that nonprofits will take on the load, there's just not enough, quite frankly, to go around. So, and I believe you mentioned that earlier, but it's such a great point.
I'll just add to that. Yeah, I mean, we were involved in our advocacy work with several federal grants and working with the state agencies, and you can already see the pullback on several programs. There was a proposal linked to a grant called Solar for All, which was to complement some work that the governor was doing out in eastern Kentucky to rebuild storm damaged housing. And that was going to provide some additional support for solar, but it was also going to help provide some of these hubs for getting support out to those regions as you rebuild or as you have more weather events. So even though it was mostly focused on solar, there were components of that that were very much designed to support communities who are in very vulnerable or prone areas. And that's happening all over right now. So we can't depend on the capacity of the nonprofits. They're under a great deal of stress right now because they've had to shift gears on funding that they were expecting and is not happening. So, I mean, we can depend on them, but don't assume that they can make up for everything.
Yeah, and I'll add that here locally in Louisville, I know a lot of the local community ministries have utility assistance. However, they do run out of money fast, and it is a one-time bill assistance payment. And so that does leave people afterwards still looking for additional funding. So I believe that the nonprofits are, able to handle emergency cases or crisis issues, but it's not a direct um, continuing support. And as Lane was saying, with that lack of funding, even if they get funding from LIHEAP or other nonprofit or federal organizations, a lot of things are on hold right now, and we just need to, try to reach out, see how we can assist others, donate our time. If we have it, donate our funds. Any other questions or comments?
Well, I just want to stress again the timeline here that decisions are going to start being made within the next month. So the more noise that people can be making right now, the better. And don't delay. Try to get comments to whoever you can, whoever you feel comfortable talking to, before we start getting into October.
Mhm. So if each one of us on here, and I think there's 21 people on the call right now, but if each one of us were to, reach out to our representative or, in addition, tell a friend, that would, add to the noise and add to the, conversation of we need this additional funding. But if anybody has any other additional questions that they weren't comfortable asking during the call, you can always email either me or Lane. Lane's email is in the chat, and I'll put my email in there as well. However, moving forward, I just again wanted to say thank you so much, Lane, for hopping on here and giving us a little more insight into the legislative level and the federal level of these proposed cuts to LIHEAP. Um, every fourth Tuesday of the month, the EveryHome program through MHC hosts a webinar that is related to affordable utilities and housing. Next month, however, we are going to be having a special event. So in lieu of a webinar, we are going to be hosting an in-person event. So this event is our report release. We've been working on a housing and utility affordability report for the past year or so with the Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance. And that report is almost ready to be published. So we will be having on um, next month's call, instead of it being a call, we will be having a report release event, and that will be at the Goodwill Opportunity Campus in Louisville off of West Broadway. And I'll be sure to send additional information to your all's emails after this call. We would love to have you all there. This report is a lot of really great information and data specifically for Louisville and for the state and region about affordable housing and affordable utilities and where we currently are compared to the rest of the United States. So we'd love to have you all there, and I will be sure to send up some follow-up information. But yes, thank you. If there are no